when you're dealing with schools? What would be 3 things that you would want to make sure that you cover with them?
NIL is actually pretty narrow, what it actually is. As people use the word NIL to mean a whole lot of things, and really a lot of times what they mean is kind of the new college environment related to benefits for student athletes. What has changed is now there are really 3 buckets of benefits that student athletes can get. We don't know how you're going to finish this, but we believe in you. We're going to go ahead and lock it in.
I feel like it's only appropriate as we get started here that kind of dive into Georgia athletics. Right?
Yeah.
We got to talk about the Dogs. I think Wes would be mad at me if I started this off and I didn't say go Dogs.
Yeah, that's right. Opening day.
Opening day today. We're joined today by Will Lawler. Will, my audience, I don't know how many of them speak athletic like department language. So help everybody understand what exactly is a deputy athletic director for legal affairs and player management. Like, help us get an understanding of that first.
Yeah, so oversee several departments. Obviously the legal work that the athletic department does, but then also the player management piece of it, which is new in kind of the NIL world. You have the pieces of it where people are generating revenue and finding outside deals for student athletes. That's kind of one piece. That's not me. You have people who are really managing the dollars and cents of the cap. That involves some of what we do, but really the player management end is dealing with the players, their representation, and helping them, work through the contracts, sign players, and help them become Georgia Bulldogs.
When you got started, because you, before coming to Georgia in, correct me if I'm wrong, 2018, I think, you worked in the SEC conference, right, for a period of years.
Yep. Worked in the SEC from about 2013 until 18, and then came to Georgia in 18.
Okay, so from 2013 to now, like, how much different is the landscape?
It's a completely different game. So even when I got to Georgia, it was 11.7 scholarships in baseball, and that's what you were managing primarily, is how do you manage your scholarships. Fast forward into, you still had kind of the old NCAA kind of enforcement model of like all the little things really, really mattered a lot. They still matter, but it's just people are less tolerant of.
It felt like there was more of like a magnifying glass a little bit from the NCAA's perspective.
Yep.
And not to say that they don't now, but it felt different then.
Yep, that's right. So you go the first 3 years of here at Georgia, 18 to really 21, and you were still doing kind of the old NCAA model. 2021, July, everything changes. It's really the California things. People think it was the court cases, but it was really the California law that was going into effect. Right. A lot of people tie Alst into like that changed everything, but it's not really true.
I remember the California one. Yeah.
That was the first state law that said you can't prevent student athletes from earning NIL dollars. And so then that ripple from that really, Austin came out about the same time. And so that's why people will tag
associated with that
a little bit, but it's way in the weeds here. But so that started changing everything in July. NIL of 21, NIL became legal. Players started being able to get paid for their use of their name, image, and likeness, who they are, their names, endorsements, that type of thing. Hadn't been up to that point, but it was still kind of new and rolling itself out. Fast forward, things started moving faster in 2022, the development of collectives and things like that. And then you were kind of off to the races after that. And so from really 22 on, it's been ever evolving. Yeah. And then you had the House settlement. All that was outside NIL. That was not school paying players for their NIL. That was just they could go do deals, outside deals. They do them with collectives and other things, different levels of institutional involvement. But then you get into the House settlement, I guess, settled in the spring of last year, and then really came into full effect, became effective in July.
Yeah.
July 1.
So I am visualizing someone listening to this right now, and they have a son who plays travel baseball, maybe a son who's kind of going into his senior year in high school or in his senior year in high school, and now he's about to go into college, right? So I want to speak to them, but I'm envisioning them right now being like, I know what NIL is, or I believe I know what NIL is.
Right.
I've talked to all of my friends who maybe have a son who's playing college baseball right now, and they've shared a little bit with me. We might have an advisor, we might not. So I have bits and pieces. I have what I can find online, but this whole thing feels so overwhelming. What is NIL? I mean, I understand it's name, image, and likeness, but like, help me understand.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. As people use the word NIL to mean a whole lot of things, and really a lot of times what they mean is kind of the new college environment related to benefits for student athletes. They kind of use that as a catch-all. NIL is actually pretty narrow what it actually is. And you talk to different people, and different people mean different things, and so you don't always know. But fundamentally, if you back up, even not using the word NIL, what has changed is now there are really 3 buckets of benefits that student athletes can get. So if you're in the recruiting process and you're asking questions, it's really kind of 3 different buckets. One is the traditional things that student athletes have always gotten, kind of incidental to participation benefits. That is food. That is your travel, your jersey, your clothes and things like that to go work out in. Certain benefits, training things. Some people we use a lot of technology here at Georgia. And so really, really high technology school, the ability to kind of see what your body can do. That's kind of one of these incidental to participation benefits. You always want to know kind of what those are. Covering your costs to play, really. Second bucket, which has always been there, but it's bigger now, is the scholarship piece. So it used to be 11.7. Now you have a roster limit of 34 in baseball. And those, anybody can be on scholarships. A lot of schools set limits because they have to for Title IX purposes. So it might not be 34 scholarships. It might be 30. It might be 27. That's your scholarship bucket. It's always been there, but there's just more of it now to go around in baseball. So that's kind of bucket 2.
Yep.
And bucket 3 is, some people use the word revenue share. Some people use it as really institutional payments for their NIL. That piece is what you hear of the cap.
Yeah.
People talk about institutional NIL piece, but in the cap is what a lot of times are doing. So that's that bucket. I said 3 buckets. I'm gonna give you a 4th.
Okay.
And yeah. 4th bucket.
This is great. I love this.
Yeah. 4th bucket is kind of your outside over the cap NIL stuff. This is what we traditionally talked about. This is endorsement deals.
Sure. Delta Airlines.
Delta Airlines is going to do a deal with someone, other companies, Newt Force, or somebody that has nothing, is not associated with Georgia, other than they want to do deals with student athletes. And we can go out and find those deals.
Yeah, that's more of for the listener, the traditional marketing deals that anybody would have had, let's just say in professional baseball.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So those are really your kind of 4 buckets of benefits. Go back to 2018, there were really 2 buckets, and one of those 2 buckets was 11.7.
And it was the first 2 buckets you referred to, right? Like all the things that you generally would get as an athlete, the second being the scholarships.
Yep.
When that changed, then when you went from the 11.7 to now, again, like the 34 limit, was that something from the inside, from a school's perspective? Like, what was the response? Are you like, oh man, did you see how much it was going to change things? Did you like that it felt like we have the ability now to, go out and maybe secure more players from a scholarship perspective? Or like, what was the initial reaction?
It's been such kind of a gradual, I say gradual, it's actually not gradual, but like there's been such shifts over time that it never felt like it all happened at once, to where it was like, wow, that's a lot. It has been a lot, but it's been a lot each year, something new since really 21.
Yeah.
And so like it's been really good, I think, for the sport of baseball, because in baseball, you're always having to manage that 11.7, which is
crazy,
pretty low given the roster sizes that you're having to deal with. And so having some freedom there, it's really, really good for the Southeastern Conference, obviously. A lot of good baseball down here. And so now you can get even better players.
Yeah, it's interesting when all of these changes started. I mean, the SEC has always been a conference that I would say is kind of leading the pack in a lot of ways from an athletic perspective. Post all of these different changes, we're starting to see there's kind of the SEC and really everybody else, right? And it's how you have, somebody who's from California originally and Southern California specifically, being in Southern California, seeing a kid, let's just say from Huntington Beach, right, decide to not take the scholarship at USC or UCLA, and instead choose to go to Georgia, like, you know, in the 80s and 90s, I felt like that would have never happened, where now all of a sudden it's like a no-brainer. Like, of course I want to go to the SEC.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was even before the whole money piece was added too, because I think back then it was like, I want to go experience this college environment that just doesn't exist on the West Coast. And so now it feels like you have a combination of both, which has allowed the SEC really to take a pretty decent lion's share of the population of athletes now.
Yeah. It's true. You've always had your certain schools, even within the SEC, have great facilities, great stadiums. It's just these kind of just metropolises in certain places. And then some are more player development focused, where it's what's under the stadium that really drives it. Hey, we're going to get you to MLB and you're going to be able to, play in the pros, and you have still a great stadium, but we're going to be able to develop you and get you to where you want to go ultimately to play in the really big atmospheres.
So can we jump? I want to go into the third bucket. When these families hear NIL, I think what they do is they kind of combine bucket 3 and 4. And they don't really understand that there's like a difference.
That's right.
Can you help? I mean, you kind of already touched on the differences, but can you talk about it maybe a little bit from a school's perspective, like why there is a difference in to a player? Just maybe, hey, money's money, so like it's the same to me. Can you talk about how it's different for the school?
Yeah. So the primary difference is, one, the institution is paying the student athlete for their NIL. So that check is coming from the University of Georgia to the student athlete. And then that student athlete is granting the school the ability to use their picture and image and name on tickets, on anything that you negotiate and can do. So that's that one. The other one is the money is coming from an outside business. The payer in that situation, Delta or Newforce or whoever it may be, is paying the student athlete to endorse their entity. So these are your billboards, your commercials, that type of thing. But for a recruit or prospect who's looking at these types of things, a lot of times you'll see 2 different agreements.
Right.
There'll be an agreement with the school that says, we're going to pay you X amount. You're granting certain rights back to the school, and then outside deals would be a separate agreement between the student athlete and, again, your outside company.
Yeah, and the one with the school is like, hey, we're going to agree to, this is going to be the deal, essentially. The other is, that dollar value could change over the course of the season. Like all of a sudden you can have more companies that reach out and want to do deals.
Yeah, schools cannot guarantee those outside deals either. They can't say, hey, if you don't, what I mean by guarantee is they can promise they'll find it for you. But it's more of a best efforts type promise than if you don't get it, then we will pay it. That is not, if you do that, it's not okay now. Okay. There was a time when that was okay, but now that's shifted. And now you're looking at probably as far as you can go as a school is, say, kind of a best efforts type thing. And you'll see that some different schools do it different ways. The reason someone is paying institutional dollars as opposed to, it's usually related to the cap space. So this is really way down the weeds, but broadly across the athletic department right now, you get about $20.4 million to spread out across all your sports. A lot of times, most places, football is the big chunk of that. Then you'll have men's and women's basketball, depending on the school. Baseball is right there in the mix. And then other sports get certain amounts. And so depending on how that's been split up and how you've kind of negotiated and done things in the past and what the future looks like, there's only so much that's available in institutional dollars because of the cap. A lot of times schools will then say, okay, but we think we can find you based on our history and everything we've done. We can find you this much in outside deals. Again, it's best efforts type language when you do that. And what I mean by that is we're going to do we know we can do this. We're telling you we can do this, and there's some trust involved.
Sure. So from the inside, you obviously work throughout the athletic department, but you're also, you handle specific things with the baseball department. I know you serve as the sports administrator for baseball.
Yep.
Are you having to almost like fight for dollars for baseball with, let's just say, the football guy? And like, does that exist? Or is it more like we come together and we just have an agreement like, hey, this is how much I need. This is how much you'll get.
Yeah. It's not really so much a fight. A lot of times it's driven by Title IX and some other things like that. But there's just it's more of a collaborative conversation between there's certain sports to where the recruiting environment and maintaining your current roster. Remember, like a lot of these guys can go pro, and so you're able to keep some guys sometimes. So just that environment, to do that, the sport and the people you're competing with on a day-to-day basis to remain competitive have to get a certain amount of cap dollars to do that. So that drives it probably as much as anything is just player market for the sport and who you're competing against.
I think it's an important thing to talk about too, that, because we're, I personally am on the player side so much of the time and talking to these families, obviously the families on the player side too. It's so easy to lose sight of kind of what globally is the goal of college athletics, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody wants to perform, right? So you have to kind of keep tabs on that and be aware of, and I've always talked about this, even for players from the standpoint of like equipment in the minor leagues. Every player, when they get drafted, they want an equipment deal.
Yeah.
And I always found it important to educate these players on, do you understand from a equipment company's perspective where they're receiving value in doing a deal with you? Because I think it's so easy getting into pro where you're like, so-and-so has a deal, I want a deal. And yeah, sure, you can get a deal, but you first need to kind of grasp, do you understand what they're like, why they're doing a deal? They don't have to do a deal with you, right?
Yeah.
And so when you started to kind of educate these players on, let's just say it's a New York Yankee, right? Okay, the New York Yankees want to do a deal with you and you're in high A. The New York Yankees, let's just say they don't need to do a deal with you because they have Aaron Judge, right? So like they're going to get the eyeballs through Aaron Judge, but they're trusting that maybe you're the next guy who can be a big name and they want to associate with you now. But there's ultimately a business behind the scenes that's like guiding their decision making. And in college athletics, it's the same thing. It's like there's a business back here. So why is football getting the majority of the money? Well, they're generating the majority of the money. There's more eyeballs on football. It doesn't mean that there's not on baseball, but that's why, baseball is maybe a little bit further behind than football. Makes sense. I've had some families who've been like, I don't understand this. I'm like, this is maybe one of the easiest things to understand.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the job and the responsibility, and I've told Wes this, that he has to navigate, okay, we have to make sure that we're obviously competing at the highest level. You have the transfer portal now. You got the kids out of the draft. It's like, you don't know. And again, being on the player side, I advise a lot of kids in the draft, and there's no way of foretelling how the draft is going to go this early in the process. So you kind of have to wait a little bit longer. All the while, you got to coach the team, right?
Yeah.
It requires a dynamic personality. And so I think Wes's job, and then maybe this is a compliment to you, Wes's job is only made easier when he has people like you behind the scenes really helping handle a lot of that other stuff.
Yeah. I think too, just it's easy for people to miss. These days, it may sound a little Pollyannish, but the ultimate goal of college athletics was always meant to develop young people, and it's the academic portion and the develop them into leaders and people that can go out into the world and do great things, play pro baseball and do that as well. But kind of that fundamental developmental of being a better person and that academic nexus that sometimes we forget about. I like to joke with people all the time. Like, people think college sports are what you see on Saturday mornings. That's like 1% of it. Now, financially, it's a huge piece of it. But like Saturday mornings in the fall, weekend series in the spring is a 5% of what college sports actually is. It's really about developing young people and trying to help them do it. People in this business, I know, like externally, and people who are trying to make it don't focus on that as much, but it actually is still the core of it. It is shifting now, being kind of pulled into the there are the business aspects of it that's driving some of this. And so as you introduce NIL, which in its purest form is about a player's NIL value, their monetary value to promote products, services, and things for businesses. Of course, like businesses are driving, like, which person helps me sell more of my product to make more money. That's what the businesses, the outside businesses, are driving there. And so it was a long wind up to say, I think that's right. Getting people's minds around kind of those two things and having them be able to coexist.
I think sometimes people have lost the forest from the trees a little bit. And even in, the business I'm in, it requires that you remind yourself oftentimes of like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the thing? Because otherwise you can go down into the minutia and like, we have to win this one little thing. That in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. And, it's funny, as you were talking, that I was like reminded of what I wanted, the reason I'm in the business is I like to see players' dreams fulfilled. Like that's actually the thing that gets me to want to do stuff, right? Why I care so much about seeing a player achieve certain goals. And again, we're here in Georgia, opening weekend. Joey's a perfect example of like seeing his dream be fulfilled is truly the most special thing that I think anybody should be focused on. So, and you guys included.
Even beyond the developmental piece, wins and losses, championships really matter. And even that's kind of separate from even that business end as well. Like in the pros, owners have to make a decision between money and championships sometimes. In colleges, we have always focused primarily on the championships end of it, wanting to win, even if we are nonprofits in a lot of ways, which is weird because people think about it as a moneymaker, but it's really all that money that's coming in is going poured right back into those players to become, again, better people, but then win championships.
That's right.
And that helps develop them as well.
Yep. So going into the house settlement, right? I think people think of, okay, the house settlement, that is a thing. It happened and we no longer have to worry about the house settlement. What is it that people don't understand about it generally? Like, when is the next thing that they're going to have to worry about with this settlement that was agreed to? Like, what is it exactly?
The house settlement set the cap. First, it permitted institutions to be able to pay players, didn't for their NIL. That wasn't around before. And so it allowed that. It also set a cap on what the institution couldn't they have other language in the settlement for, but that's basically what it is a cap. It set that, and it also allowed us to go find outside deals. It's calculated based on a bunch of different numbers, and those numbers will grow over time. Every 3 years, there's a little bit of a look in, and there's some bumps along the way. So it grows slowly over time. I think the primary things that you're seeing now is it's really because it happens so fast, you're building out the infrastructure for it. And
like, how is it going to work? Like in practice.
That's right. So the institutional payments are actually probably were set up pretty well first. And that there's a pretty good, you're having to learn how to manage the cap. You kind of were behind. There was some front loading that happened. And then now you're trying to get back where you can manage your cap and see what's going to be. There's a bump. And then now it's kind of leveling out over time and seeing what's driving that. So that's a big piece of it. But then her outside cap, NIL Go. So any outside deals now have to go through NIL Go, which means you get an outside deal. The player has to submit it. School doesn't do it for you. You get a deal with Jittery Joe's Coffee here in town, and they want to do a deal. Player has to put that into NIL Go, and they check it for, is there a legitimate business purpose? Is it a real business, or is it fake? You're just money
laundering.
Money laundering. And then 2, is it within the range of compensation? So what fair market value?
Right.
They don't like the word fair market value, but
makes sense.
Range of compensation for a similar player and a similar business and what they would normally pay. It's not just this.
Right. So
fake again.
Some random business says, hey, my buddy's dad owns it, and I'm going to pay $100,000, and you're going to have to just tweet one time. It's that's not going to pass.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So you got to go through it. It takes a little time, gets vetted, all that stuff. So anytime.
It's fairly quick, though. I was actually surprised how quick some of this stuff comes through.
Some of them are the ones to where they're not associated with the institution go relatively quick. The ones that where they are associated, that's kind of a different level of review. The ones that aren't associated, they don't even do that. It's just you got to report it, and it's pretty much clear. They're associated with the institution, and they have to do that extra level.
Is that like you get a phone call and they have questions and you got to answer the questions, or is it like just behind the scenes?
The associated company, associated entity is what they call it, but this associated company has to fill out kind of what it is. And then they're just checking, is there a legitimate business purpose?
Right.
If it's in Delta, Jittery Joe's, there's clearly a legitimate business purpose there. And then they look for the range of compensation, and they have algorithms and metrics that we don't know, but that fits that. So
thankful that's not our job.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But it's interesting because that is to your audience, as you're going through and there's these best efforts promises that are being made, it's got to make it through. All of those have to make it through NIL Go. And so a lot of times you'll see these giant numbers and you're just like, I don't know how you're going to get that through unless you just have a really solid plan of kind of, there are these 10 companies, here they are, and this is how they're going to make it through the process. And so just a big number out there that they say they can go get for you. Nice to see at least some idea of how you're going to get this.
Yeah. If you could wave a magic wand and change something for the better, Is there something that jumps out? Like, I wish this was more streamlined or.
Yeah, I think right now it's just getting things going. In a perfect world, you would have had a year to build out NIL Go, have the new College Sports Commission fully staffed, and then you hit go and everybody's clicking instead of your little bit of building the plane as you're flying it. So there can be some backlogs with associated entities and deals. And a lot of times you're like, okay, this is companies already either about to pay them or hasn't. They've already done their production shoot, things like that, and it's not cleared yet. And so if you could refine that a little bit better, it would be, that's perfect world, but that's not the world we live in. So you gotta get there and do the best you can.
Yeah. I asked this question because I am an advisor and agent. How has it been dealing with the various people like me? I mean, I imagine there's ones that you enjoy talking to and others that maybe are a little more difficult. But the reason I want to jump into this a little bit is because I really would love, from your perspective, if you had to describe what kind of like the ideal person on the other side that you're dealing with would look like. Like, what would you say on that?
Ideal for me, or ideal for your parent?
Maybe like if you, knowing what you know, were a parent, which you are, but had a son who was now going through the process, like what would be that ideal character?
I think it would be someone who had good relationships with the school. You don't want it adversarial from the beginning because that just bogs things down. And if you know where we sit, if you know it's going to be a fight, then start way over here instead of just kind of getting, hey, we're just going to have a conversation. We know kind of the main issues we got to talk through. You get through it and you move on. There's always back and forth, and that's great. That's actually, that's the way it's supposed to work. That's fine. But the ones that you can kind of get to those primary issues more quickly on would be ideal. So that having people that have some history in the game, kind of know what the market is and have a good feel for that. That's always really important for a parent. If knowing the schools, knowing what schools will do what, knowing when a school is reliable for that best efforts kind of stuff. Like they tell you this and they bet you, but they've never not delivered on being able to find these legitimate outside deals that get through NIL Go versus they tell you a number and it doesn't mean anything. Because in baseball particularly, schools are going to have to manage some of this through kind of those best efforts outside deals. And so being able to trust them when they tell you that, if I was a parent, would be critical. Have you ever not delivered? Have you those types of things?
That's a great question. I do want everyone to kind of think about that too, because if there's a proposal, right? Because when you go through this as a parent and as a kid, you're thinking nothing but positive thoughts. This is all going to work out. This is great. I love this. Everybody's, in the best of moods. But asking that question, hey, have you ever not delivered on anything that you've said?
Yeah.
Amazing question.
And just knowing that school, if they have a good reputation where they have, then that sometimes another school the numbers, if you're getting two different numbers, if you're getting here's the rev share and then here's the best efforts, somebody may promise you a lot in rev share and have a small best efforts amount that they're going to go out and find you. If they don't hit it, then it doesn't do you a lot of good versus someone who may have a smaller rev share amount, but has a great reputation for finding that. You need to know. Or vice versa. You're in really bad shape if it's a small rev share amount and they don't have a good reputation for finding outside the gap.
I'm imagining you lean very heavily on the staff, the baseball staff, as far as like, hey, like, what are we comfortable with this player, right? Because it's obviously what I imagine, not having been behind the scenes, what I imagine you're kind of navigating is, all right, we have X number of dollars, right? Mm-hmm. We have all these other various guys. We don't know who's going to sign, who's not going to sign. So it's this constant like juggling of figures. And what the coaching staff at least probably understands is, well, this guy's not just talking to us, right? Like he's considering a lot of different places, especially with the transfer portal. So is that fair to say?
Yeah. And every coach, every coach is different, and so like some coach you like to keep it to like, you don't have a lot of people talking, especially talking about money, because then it starts getting, no offense, but the agents and others out there will start saying, well, I don't like his answer. So I'm going to, mom didn't tell me yes. So I'm going to dad, type thing. So you try to keep it, pretty narrow to having a singular voice. Maybe it's the head coach and someone like me. A lot of times in baseball, that's what it is. But then even how they evaluate players. Some are still kind of your old school baseball guys who it's a feel thing for them. There's a big subjective element to it. And so when you're trying to not just evaluate how good a player they are, but actually value them. Well, how much is a player like this? How much is their NIL worth? How much are they worth kind of in the current market? Baseball coaches usually some have better feels for that. Wes is fantastic.
Yeah.
That has his own models. Like his valuation.
Yeah. There's no shortage of insight with Wes.
Yeah.
He's got an idea.
Yeah. I think baseball is a special sport in there that just because of the old, data analytics, all of that, there's there's more of a built-in kind of, objective metrics that I think most are at least paying attention to. Some use it more than others, but
how does like a social following matter for a school?
I think it does. If you are using a lot of your kind of best, if they are a best efforts heavy player, if you have a large social following, it helps because they look at that when you're going through NIL Go.
Yeah, it's eyeballs.
Yeah,
right.
That's how you justify. Well, they're going to get whatever $2,000, $5,000 for 3 posts. Well, if you only have 1 follower, it's hard to say that's worth that. But if you have, whatever the number is, then it helps. Schools now spend a lot more time trying to like help players build their brand, build their followings if they want to. Some don't. Some that's not the interest. They want to play baseball, and that's somebody else's thing. And a lot of times they're more focused on kind of the cap dollars. Stuff. So
speaking about social media, are you going through the history of a guy's social or not following, but just like some of his posts? Has he said anything that's been controversial? Is there going to be an issue that we're going to have? Like I imagine you want to familiarize yourself with like, who's the guy that we're, quote unquote, getting into business with, right? For lack of a better term. But
strangely, this is the part, like that's always kind of been a thing, kind of a character reference type thing. Before you sign someone, you want kind of to know where their character is. And then also now everybody puts everything on social media so you can see a lot more. But then also if there's things out there reputationally that you just don't want to take on as an institution. So that actually has probably been around even before this, but it is particularly important. It's probably more important now for the student athlete because if they do have those reputational issues, companies will not want to take that on.
Yeah. Going back to the agent thing real fast, is there something that you wish every agent understood about what you have to deal with, right? Is there something that, if agents only understood that this is what we had to deal with, like this would be a lot easier conversation?
Yeah, it's probably the cap space and the limits.
Like it's not that we don't want to give you the money. I'd love to give you the money, but I'm having to navigate.
This is it. Or the way you have to structure certain deals to where if you can structure the deal in certain ways, then we can get back cap space, not just for, if I give you, pitcher, all the money, all the cap space that we have, then you don't have any bats. And 1-0 is still a loss. And so like you got to have players around you and stuff like that. And so we can structure things in ways that may look a little bit like that's not in the best interest of this particular player, but it does help build a team around them. Sometimes you get there on the dollars. Sometimes you get there in the structure of the agreement that just helps us be able to find a little more cap space. There's only so much money we can pay. And so just finding cap space for other players to put around those players is really important.
Yeah. Going back to the house settlement too, what kept coming to mind as you were talking about that was like the collective bargaining agreement in baseball, right? You have MLB and the union come to agreement on a deal. And then over the next couple of years, everybody is left really trying to figure out, all right, how is this whole thing going to function? Like, how is this really going to work? And then you start to see, oh, so this is now how teams are starting to use these rules and work and try to be as malleable as possible to improve their ball club within the rules. But now there's a clear trend of how they're doing that. And then it seems like the next CBA is trying to correct some of the ways in which guys got around it. And so do you feel like in college, like there's an element of that probably will happen as you figure out how schools are maybe, again, playing within the rules, but kind of manipulating things a certain way that they would maybe shift and change.
Even within the house settlement, like it gives some room to develop anti-circumvention rules.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so you'll see that over time, like things, they can pass new rules that prevent that type of circumvention. Sometimes it's truly, yes, circumvention, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not. They're not circumventing anything. It's just a more efficient way to find true, legitimate above cap deals, and that there's always a little bit of a rub there.
Yeah. So, I have an interesting question that I'm going to propose to you to see if you want to. Is there something that you want to ask me that you would be dying to know from the player's perspective?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. You may not can answer this. The one thing I would always be curious of is when, and I'm not talking about you particularly here, I'm just talking about agents generally, the numbers that you come with first that are X school is offered this, are most of the time those real numbers, or are those kind of inflated a little bit to see if we'll come up?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I would tell you, I would assume it's, and this is maybe how I'm different than others. I think, and I'll relate it to in the major leagues when you're negotiating a contract. It is the easiest thing in the world to say, this is what the player's value is. But for you as an agent to then go and get the value is something totally different. And that requires strategy. It requires a game plan that you have to execute. And part of that game plan is leverage, right? But also it's like, what does the market say this player in particular is worth, right? In this instance of what you're asking, I would say it depends on the relationship that you have with the agent, because we could talk about any player and I could just make up a figure and say, I have this. I think what the agent needs to consider is that even believable, right? If you don't have it, you got to be careful the language you use. And this, I truly believe this. If the reason why I cannot mislead a baseball team, and I'll put a school right there, is because if you catch me lying about something one time, I'm a liar forever. Right. And I built up my reputation over 25 years in the business to ensure that when I tell a team something, like it's true, I got it. Otherwise I would not be saying that. And that's one of those things that I think maybe an inexperienced advisor, somebody who isn't really thinking through it maybe enough. Maybe they're afraid they're going to get fired by the player. And so this is the only pathway to maybe try to get this big dollar. But I would tell you, it truly, maybe it's not the answer you wanted, but it kind of depends. No. I would say the most experienced ones, when they say, I would also pay attention to how are they saying it too, right? Are they saying, look, I have this, and if you don't say yes to this, we're going to take this other deal right now in one phone call, like we're ready to go? Or is it, hey, I'm just telling you I have this, but let's keep negotiating, because that's something totally different.
No, that makes sense. No, but that is probably the question that we're always wrestling with the most. It's different than the pros, where generally, you may not know the negotiating when you get in free agency and that type of thing.
No, you know, like value.
Roughly. But you know value of players, whereas you go into particularly portal markets and stuff now, and half the time you're like, I don't know, that's real, and you're always having to gauge. So that is very true. You asked earlier about schools. If you have an honest agent representation who you can trust, then you go into those and you're like, he's not lying to me. I know he's negotiating. He may be puffing a little bit. It might be he's trying to stretch some things to get the most for his client, but it's not that. It's just completely, I'm just throwing a number out there to see if I can see what I can get.
Well, and this may be a message for either parents or potential agents out there. It's not, a negotiation isn't like, okay, I'm going to clock in for this phone call, negotiate, hang up the phone and stop negotiating. A negotiation, and I remember like learning this throughout the years, it starts the minute you become a professional. Every conversation you have is a negotiation, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in like the specific case of like the team is looking at you like you're negotiating, but everything that you say, the people that you're speaking to are analyzing, what does this mean? So if you're a player in professional baseball and you're kind of coming up through the minor leagues, and randomly a trainer says to you, and the GM, farm director is over here off to the side listening, and he says, hey, did you see so-and-so's early extension that he signed with that team? And you go, oh my gosh, yeah, amazing for him. Loved that for him. That GM, farm director, whomever it is like, oh, this guy would take an early extension. And he in that moment isn't thinking about that. He's just responding, having a conversation, I'd say, with the trainer.
Yeah.
But that's where the negotiation starts. So then down the road, Are they going to offer you something fair, or maybe they're going to start a little bit low? They're probably going to start a little bit low.
Yeah.
And so that's maybe a bad example, but it just gives you something to think about. And so with guys going through this whole college decision and everything, I think the same applies. Like every conversation you have, I have to be thinking about the best blueprint for any agent is if you're truly in this business for the right reasons and you care about the player, then you can just be yourself. Right. If you're not in the business for that reason, then now you're having to orchestrate this whole thing. And at some point, you're going to make a mistake. Someone's going to figure it out. You're not going to be liked. Your reputation's going to be bad, whatever it is. I don't think there's an alternative pathway.
Yeah.
And so leading with, all right, I want to make sure that this player is taken care of. I'm obviously smart enough to know everything that I say is being analyzed and taken, and they're going to go back and talk about what I've said. But I think the best thing an agent can do before any of this starts is actually figure out from the player, what do you want? Not money. What do you want?
Yeah.
Right? If everything was considered equal, every school's offer was the same, where do you want to go? I want to go to this school first. Okay, great. Now we can put a plan together to figure out, well, how do I make sure that we get you what you want, which is to be with this school, but only if, let's just say, the money's equal with everybody else. All right, well, now that plan is going to have to take all those things into account. And that's where, I guess we're now in this agent train of conversation, but that's where I believe it separates an agent or an advisor who truly has the things that you referenced earlier. Good relationship with the school, transparent, honest. I feel like it's an open dialogue. That person understands what we're dealing with. We understand what they're dealing with. And it's this reciprocal thing that can grow over time where you're not just sending one guy there one time. It's, you're dealing with each other over the next 15, 20 years. And we'll see a multitude of players come through. And it's never a situation where an agent, because I think sometimes agents, when they look at this like a contentious negotiation, they call you on the phone and be like, it has to be this or don't call me back. Why does the negotiation have to be like that? Like that's not the best approach to get what you want.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes with agents, they don't necessarily have, like I look at them like chefs, like they don't have another ingredient to use to make the cake.
Yeah.
It's just, I got to bully you and tell you this is what it's got to be. Doesn't work all the time.
I think also too, I've noticed over time, there are some agents of representation that they take it very serious once that contract is signed. And so it's like, I feel like their reputation is on the line as well. See too much now in college sports there. Everything is done. We've agreed to everything. And then a month later, somebody else comes in. They're not supposed to be talking, but they do. And now they're jumping in the transfer portal or going somewhere else within a month. I think those types of things, you see some agents that are like, no. Yeah, you want me to represent you.
That's not happening.
We're not doing this.
Right.
And others, it's just kind of, they go do what they do.
Yeah, I respect that. I think this just happened with the quarterback out of Washington as an example. These things don't happen a ton, but they do happen every once in a while. You'll get a kid who, let's just say, agrees to something, signs his deal. And then like a day or 2 or 5 days later, all of a sudden he's going and he's leaving. Those are rare, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, they are. They are.
Do you think, how does that happen? Because, not that this is in your experience, but do you believe that those things happen because there was some lack of communication? Something was said that maybe turned out to be untrue? Like, what would lead a player to ultimately do that? Because I just think it's absolutely wild that a guy would agree to a deal and then a day or 2 later renege and enter the portal.
Yeah, I don't know. Other than the first interest, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what's in the mind of those people. But what it appears to be is sometimes these portal markets are crazy and the dollars jump up really high, really fast. And so, what was a fair deal 2-3 months ago, now the portal markets are just crazy, and then they got a lot of money thrown at them, and they're willing to jump for the money.
Right. This is my one chance to go bank some money. And sorry if I'm offending you or you think I'm not a man of my word, but
the school took some risk early to be able to say, we think this is what your NIL is worth.
Yeah.
And we're going to go in and lock it in. We don't know how you're going to finish this season, but we believe in you. We're going to go ahead and lock it in over time and commit to you over time. And then the portal hits and the wild west of that goes on for a while, and all of a sudden there's a bigger number, and now the school had the risk kind of on both ends, and the player because the school was locked in.
Yeah.
And so they were locked in for that amount of time, and then they go somewhere else and they got the best of both worlds, protection and more money.
I've gotten asked this question quite a bit, like, is the portal good or bad? And it's interesting because to me, it's like neither. It's one of those things where if it's handled improperly, it's bad. But in a certain situation, putting money aside, do I think it was ever fair that a player has to go to a college and all of a sudden now, he's at the mercy of whatever that coach thinks? That coach all of a sudden, even though he committed him, is like, you're never going to play here. And that guy really, maybe he, I guess he could release it from the scholarship, but like doesn't really have any recourse. Like, no, I think in that instance, the portal's great. I think it's bad when it just becomes this thing where literally you see guys that'll go there here for a freshman year, there for a sophomore year, there for a junior year. And it's worse in football, obviously. But I mean, I'm a loyal guy. I like loyalty and I like seeing guys play for one place. Unless, there's circumstances that, make it so that you have to leave. But when you do decide to enter the portal, that's where I think you need to be so buttoned up with how you're going to handle things. Because it's the easiest thing to lose your reputation as a player immediately. Right.
And even too, going back to kind of that again, maybe a little bit sounds a little Pollyannish, but most of us believe this. Like if the ultimate goal of college is graduation, player transfers 4 times. I mean, you can do it, but your graduation rates go to drop dramatically. And so, your point is the portal a good thing in general? Sure. But if you bounce from school to school to school, the odds of you being able to get your degree, which is the point of college, it just drops so much that it becomes hard to manage. I don't know how you solve that at this point, given everything else that's going on. It feels like it's kind of a, either or type situation.
But I think we're in a place where there's a lot of things that need to get cleaned up. They're going to eventually figure it out over time. And that'll be another thing that gets figured out, but not necessarily yet.
I'll say too, like even when people they sign these deals, that school is then out finding deals for them. They're putting them on season tickets. They're spending money depending on them, and then they go somewhere else. And now that their NIL that they hold at that time is basically valueless.
Right.
If you're playing somewhere else, then your sponsors that wanted to put them in a commercial that you had lined up are now like, what the heck? These are businesses who are used to, and so then that hurts kind of your future reputation with those companies. Next time you want to be able to have some best efforts conversations with recruits and go to these companies like, hey, we've got, what types of deals do you want to do with our players? If they don't know if they can rely on that, then they might not be as willing to do deals with players and with you as the university.
So as we wrap up here, I have a couple random things that I want to get with you on. Some of this you may have already talked about, but I think this would be extremely valuable. So I want you to visualize that you are talking to your best friend, and your best friend has a son who's 17 years old, and he's now starting to be communicated with by all these colleges. And you have 10 minutes to sit down with him and his family and like get him up to speed about like, all right, listen, this is what you got to be prepared for, right? When you're dealing with schools, what would be like 3 things that you would want to make sure that you cover with them?
The coach, making sure the coach is a fit and is going to fit with you and the family, his plan for the player. And I'm talking about, yes, academically, but as a player, and probably less financial on that in that first piece. Like, what is the plan for, what are your goals as a player? And then what is the plan for that player here? What's playing time progression look like generally? My goal is to play Major League Baseball, and I feel like I need to increase my velocity to be able to do that, or I need to be able to, improve something else. What's the plan for that? How does the place in general highlight that ability to do that? We talked about stadiums and things like that earlier. There are certain stadiums that are great fits and make you look as good as possible for major league teams. So I think that's kind of bucket one. It's kind of what's the plan and kind of fit. there. And I think not losing that priority, because college, as opposed, pro deals, you're talking about long periods of time. College is a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers, at least in baseball, are not so, for the 99% are not so great that they overcome that piece of it, what your future could be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say that's number one. Number two is kind of understanding the financial package, what the benefits, incidental look like. Sometimes that's the hidden piece that people don't understand. Like, yeah, I can pay you a bunch of money, but what does the food situation look like? Like 18 to 22-year-old boys eat a lot. Baseball players eat a lot. So like, what does that situation look like? What does my day-to-day look like? What is even the developmental pieces that they're paying for? Knowing that part of it. And then the scholarship situation, how that's going to be kind of ironed out. There's a little bit of still kind of dividing that type of stuff up. And then I guess that's kind of bucket two. And then probably that third bucket is okay, now what's the rev share number? What are the
terms?
Yeah. What's the institutional number? What are you going to go out and find in other type deals? And what's that look like?
As a follow-up to that, are you guys finding for guys that are going to get drafted or have the potential to be drafted that it is becoming more common to start actually diving into the agreement itself before the draft? Like assuming that this guy ends up on campus, like doing that in advance of the draft rather than after.
Maybe more with current players who may be draft eligible.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah.
And so you're having that conversation. I think most of the time, sometimes you'll have an initial conversation about the number, but at least at this point, we'll see. We're only in kind of year one of this.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's kind of like morphing and changing as we go.
Yeah, terms and like your actual like legal kind of language stuff, not as much for newcomers. Yeah, whether it's high school kid or a transfer kid, if they're trying to decide between draft or going pro, and that like usually maybe the number a little bit. And it's kind of a fluid conversation. But the terms are usually after.
Post. Yeah.
Maybe some big stuff,
All right. I got some rapid fire. It's going to be quick.
Okay.
You're going to love this.
Yeah.
Number one, why Georgia?
Oh man. Georgia baseball. I'd say Wes Johnson. The most positive, fun, smart coach that I'm a little biased on the sport administrator for baseball, but in general, I think most people would say go spend a day with Wes Johnson and you will come out of it. He's a kind of he's a joy pusher. Come out, you just feel better. You go to some folks and
superstar.
Yeah, that's right. Superstar. Yeah. So that would be the key. He will have a plan.
Okay. Number two, what is one piece of advice you would give to a player thinking that he only needs to commit to a school and leave for more money after the first year?
Think long term. College is short. You're going to enjoy college. Go to the place where you're going to have some fun, enjoy that college life, develop, and put yourself in the best position for life. That end of it.
Yeah.
So,
all right, last one. What does college athletics look like in 2030? You're like rapid fire. This is like
if I knew that 4 or 5 years from now, what does it look like? Man, it's hard to, because when I first started predicting all this, I'm slowing your pace down in here a little bit. But when I first started predicting all of this, I said in 10 years, I think this is where we'll be, and that happened within a year. And so it was always like this. The time frame is so much faster than where we are. Obviously, the cap will grow. I think at some point you're going to have a stronger regulatory body. There's just too much wild west. I think deep down people love college sports and they love what college sports are about, and they don't want to lose it. And right now we're kind of at this tipping point of having to choose between, do you want to have college sports anymore? What we traditionally thought of. I'm not talking about NIL or being able to pay players or anything like that, but do you actually want to have college sports, or is that just over and we're like,
this is enough?
We're in Europe and it's just pros or high school, and there's nothing in between. And And I think the answer people are going to say is yes. We still love and want college sports. And to do that, broken record these days, but you're going to have some intervention from either Congress or courts in a different way.
No, I agree. I think there's like an innocence with college athletics that people really appreciate. I think people look at professionals sometimes, they're jaded. They're making all this money. They don't understand. And very quickly, when you become a professional, it's a job, right? Whether you love the game or not, it still feels like work.
Yeah.
Where in college athletics, it's like the last time you can really just play the sport because you love it. I don't think people want that to go anywhere.
Yeah. No, that's right. It's the love of the game, right?
Yeah. Well, I do think, interestingly enough, what does college athletics look like in 2030? I think on some level with college baseball, it is directly tied to what is happening with the CBA in baseball. I think with the draft, there's going to be some changes that come through that it'll be interesting to see how that changes things with college. I think it's a good thing for college baseball, though, because where back in the day, so many kids would have signed if they limit the amount of rounds. Obviously, not as many kids can sign. More guys will go to college. So it'll increase the game in college, which will be good, which is also in turn good for players, too, because then college almost becomes like a minor league system in a sense, which it already is,
right?
But like even more guys will go to college. And so in turn, it's going to require, coaches to get better continually and learn how to develop better. And so I think ultimately we're going to figure this thing out. It's going to be all good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But this was very, very insightful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
I feel like every time I talk to you, I'm learning something.
No, me too. This is great. If you can get one thing done in Major League, if you can just get the draft moved back a few weeks, like back into June, that would be fantastic.
So I got to be honest, man, everybody wants it back. Yeah. Everybody.
Yeah.
The scouts hate it because the scouting directors, there are events going on that they can't get to, right? The Cape. No one even goes to the Cape anymore.
Yeah.
Can't get to these events, honestly, because, they're getting ready for the draft.
Yeah. We have the portal's over and you don't even know, is this your team or not?
I know.
That
needs to be lined up and fixed. There's no question.
Yeah.
But appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
This is great. Yeah. Appreciate it.
Go Dogs.
Yeah, absolutely.